Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we are talking all things Colorado Rockies. And boy, did that stink. I am recording just about 10-15 minutes after the Rockies blow a game against the Miami Marlins. They get walked off in the ninth inning. Victor Vodnik gives a nice little change-up meatball surprise, and it's Owen Casey, who went 5 for 10 in the series against the Colorado Rockies, and his last hit is a 2-run bomb to win it for the Marlins. And the Marlins sweep the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies get swept to start the season. So let's talk about it. Obviously, because I don't record on Saturdays or Sundays, or there's no uploads, we'll kind of recap the series, talk a lot about this game that just went down. And look, this is a pretty disappointing trip for the Colorado Rockies. And if you see me looking on the side, I've got some notes on my phone as well as being able to pull up a schedule and everything like that. But this is a disappointing start for the Colorado Rockies. One, because the way that the Rockies lost in a couple of these games, it's kind of a complete losing effort from everyone involved, from the bats not being able to drive in runs, to the bullpen giving up runs, to the starters not going deep enough into these games. And we'll kind of touch on all that. So that's one of the big reasons. The second of which is this Rockies schedule is miserable. I mean, it is completely miserable for the next 30 days, 20 days, 25 days. Next month, at the end of the month, you get the Cincinnati Reds, who are definitely a better baseball team than Colorado Rockies. So, and that's probably the best matchup you have, maybe Houston. Who knows? But regardless, you start 0-3. Now you're going to go on the road to Toronto, and then you'll host Philly, host Houston. Those are your next 3 series. Good luck, Colorado. And so really, really a tough way to start the year. On top of that, just a massive gut punch in this game. The Rockies did all their damage in the first inning. A bases clearing triple from Jordan Beck, which was really encouraging to see early on to get a knock with the runners in scoring position. But that was about it. The Rockies had about 3 or 4 hits the rest of the way. And they didn't do any more damage. Quintana, he goes 4 1/3, and I'll touch on this as well. But all 3 starting pitchers for the Colorado Rockies get pulled in the 5th inning. Go 4 1/3. Quintana and Freeland both give up 2 runs, and then Michael Lorenzen gives up 3, which isn't crazy at the end of the day, right? Like a 4.15 ERA. You kind of live with that with your starting pitching if that's what they ended the season with. This is obviously just one game, but it's obviously the bullpen that this time fails to get it done, as well as just the bats going ice cold. But just disappointing stuff. And then the Rockies, this felt like a game that was in their grasp. Victor Vodnik comes in the 8th. The bases are loaded. He gets out of it, has a big-time strikeout in the 9th, gives up a hit. Troy Johnson makes a great play to force a double play. Had a leaping catch, and a double off of what could have been a really bad line from Jake McCarthy. I need to see it again, but it looked like he might have made the right read, and then the ball just was about 2 or 3 feet over his glove. Might have been a little bit less. And then, Owen Casey just sends 1 yard. And so really, really disappointing way to end the series. Vodnik gets the loss. Jaden Hill was the loser in Game 2. Kyle Freeland, the big loser in Game 1. And the Rockies get swept. And a tough series where the bats were cold. They had multiple opportunities to drive in runs. Game 2 was definitely difficult because Yuri Perez was phenomenal, but look, the Rockies actually they had 2 nukes against Perez, and on top of that, I mean, Tovar especially felt like every time the ball left his bat, it was a hard hit ball. So Yuri Perez, for as good as he is he can be a bit susceptible to some of those harder hits. Edward Julian, give him credit. He did have an opportunity in that second game, knocks a double, gets a third with just one out, and the Rockies failed to drive him home. And that's just one of many examples where the Rockies just their bats were just cold in this series. They just didn't do enough. Obviously, a great start in this game 3 against the Marlins, and nothing else after that. A couple of guys to note just to start this season. Jake McCarthy, batting .091. He's been his speed is phenomenal, right? Like watching him on the base path is a ton of fun to have that kind of speed. But I mean, it was a bunt single. I think that's his one hit of the year, a bunt single, and nothing else. He struck out twice today. A leadoff guy is great if he can get on and has a ton of speed, but it does not matter if you can't get on base. That was one of the fears with McCarthy and one of the fears with Brenton Doyle. I said, hand up, before the season, I said, I want to see Brenton Doyle leading off possibly, or Tovar leading off. And this is the year Doyle bounces back, and there's still great opportunity for Doyle to bounce back. It's just 3 games. But he's 0 for 11 in these first 3 games. And just more disappointing plate appearances from Doyle now, which I think is just hard to see because, look, last year was a difficult year. We wanted to bounce back, and overall just disappointing. Castro, he went 1 for 3 today with also a walk. Tovar has been probably the most impressive at the plate. He did go 1 for 4, but like I said, he's had some really solid contact. And Goodman's looked pretty good too. TJ Rumfield had a home run in game 2, which was a blast. That was great to see. But just miserable at the plate when there's runners in scoring opportunity, and scoring position, excuse me. But I'm thinking of the scoring opportunities for the Rockies. And we've talked about the margin for error is so slim for this team. You just can't make mistakes, and you have to take advantage when you have an ability to score. And the Rockies just didn't do that in this opening series. Jordan Beck, though, his hit was obviously huge, but ultimately not enough. Not enough scoring from the Rockies in these 3 games. They score 1 run, 3 runs, and 3 runs, right? So scores 7 total runs in the series. That's just not enough. It's just not enough, and yeah, pretty disappointing. And it kind of goes into the third point of just pitching looked okay overall. Obviously, you have a bad taste in your mouth with what just happened with Vodnik, but there are, I think, some positives. I do want to take away some positives from this opening series because there are some things that are encouraging. One of the wrinkles that I actually like are the long arms in the bullpen. Antonio Senzatella goes 2 2/3. Had an opportunity to get out of it. It was this little chopper to first that Castro wasn't able to make a play on it, so he got taken out. And then that's when Vodnik was put into the 8th inning. It was also a little dicey because there was a strike 3 call if you make a proper challenge, and the Rockies just didn't do that. But overall, Senzatella and the long relief, that middleman going 2 2/3 is huge. And if him and Dollander can kind of play that role where they give you solid appearances, that's huge. That's huge because, look, one of the clear things that is pointed out in this first series is I don't know how much you can trust the starting pitching for the Colorado Rockies, because you even just compare it to the Marlins. Sandy gives you 7. Uri gives you 7. And even today in this game for Miami, Meyer gives you 5. So even 5 innings pitch is nice. I know he gave up 3 runs, but he had 5 strikeouts. It's just not enough if your pitchers are only able to go 4 1/3. That just what are you supposed to do with that? And that's where the wrinkle comes in handy with Senzatella and Dollander, right? Because if those guys can only give you 4 1/3, but you have a middle reliever that can give you 2 or 3 innings, that can be a pretty big lift. And so ultimately, there was a huge pitching disparity here, right? Like there's a big difference between having a decent pitcher and a great pitcher. And the Marlins' top two guys are great, or at least Yuri Perez is phenomenal. He's obviously a ton of fun to watch. It's hard to describe some of his mannerisms, but you could tell he was pitching with a ton of confidence. And we got vintage Sandy, unfortunately, Sandy Alcantara, where he was just dominant. He was just dominant on the mound. Overall, some of the relievers looked really good. Bernardino looked good. Herget looked good. Senzatella looked good. That's three guys that all looked really solid. Two of those guys with multiple outings. Senzatella made his first appearance of the year. And then there's the bad. Jaden Hill, obviously, he got out of a jam, and then he gives up the winning run in the eighth. And then Victor Vodnik gets out of a bases-loaded jam, has a huge strikeout. And you think, all right, we're good. He gets the double play in the ninth. All right, one out left. We're good. And just really disappointing. From a guy who had a couple pitches top 100 miles an hour, it was looking pretty solid. Some of his pitches were looking pretty nasty. And he gives up a nuke, right? Like a lot of these are just thoughts of right after the game. But for a bullpen that should be better this year, it's just a really disappointing result that they're not able to hold, especially with the lead. But like I said, this was a group effort because the blown lead is tough, but the Rockies, the bats were also tough, right? Like the starting pitching was not great. It was a complete effort across the board for the Rockies to get swept this weekend. And ultimately, though, when you have an opportunity to close it in a one-run game in the ninth, you have to do it. Yeah, there's just no excuse, right? Like you can say, "Hey, we should have scored more runs. We should have done this," but Victor Vodnik needs to get that done, and he's not able to. So it's just a bad taste in, I think, all of our mouths, just because we know the Rockies are probably going to struggle this year, but they had multiple opportunities to win one, maybe two games. And that's a stinger. And just to kind of finally touch back on the starting pitching, man, what it would do for the Rockies to find an ace like Yuri, have someone like Sandy, right? Like what a nasty 1-2 punch. And the Rockies just don't have that right now. And that will be one of the big missions for this front office, for Alan Leichman, Warren Schaefer. How do you find that diamond in the rough? How do you find those diamonds in the rough, right? And that's a Marlins team that also had Edward Cabrera, right? They've had some really great pitching come through. And the Rockies have had solid pitching for sure. Their last great season was Kyle Freeland, many years ago now. 2018, I believe. And since then, you've had some decent pitching, but that's about it. So it's going to be a long season. And it's just a really disappointing way to end the opening series to the season. And you look ahead on the horizon. Now the Rockies continue this road trip and they go to Toronto. Hey, sorry, we know you just got swept. We're going to have you play the guys who just won the AL, and we're an out away from winning the World Series. Hope you enjoy. And it's going to be another tall task, and now you're getting the back end of this rotation. So I'm really interested to see Sugano and Feltner in their opening debuts. What will that look like? And I am actually excited for Sugano because he doesn't have to pitch at Coors Field to start the season. And so hopefully that will at least bode somewhat better for the Rockies for that back end of the rotation. But man, just a disappointing start to the year, and the Rockies have a really, really challenging next month of baseball. And you just hope that, hey, there's some positives to take away. They were in all three of these games. They had multiple opportunities to win. But we were, as fans, reminded how slim the margin is and some of that talent disparity for the Colorado Rockies. So definitely difficult to watch at times, but there are some positive takeaways that you need to be reminded of because it can be really easy to be doom and gloom. But some of these younger bats, TJ Rumfield, I mean, it's hard not to feel excited about him. Troy Johnson makes a nice play today. And then, of course, Tovar. Tovar, I think we should all just be really excited about, because I think he will be an absolute pillar for the Colorado Rockies for hopefully multiple years to come. You hope that the front office doesn't do anything dumb with him, and I don't think they will. I think they recognize that. He's probably going to be the biggest star that the Rockies have moving forward. Hunter Goodman as well in that mix. So regardless, though, really, really, really tough opening series. Now they go on the road to Toronto. And so very curious to see how that looks. And we'll be able to do more of game-by-game breakdowns, right, throughout this week and beyond. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe. Leave a comment down below. What was something that you actually loved on opening weekend? What was something that made you want to pull your hair out? Regardless, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you on Tuesday.